Good evening, everybody, to the Positive Power Hour. I'm Dan, your host, and this is the beautiful Nicole, my co host, and my awesome daughter. So,
Hi,
welcome to all of
everybody.
you. Yeah. I'm going to get on our comments section here. It would be great for those of you that are in the audience to participate and give us some feedback. I have no idea what we're going to talk about tonight or how long we're going to go. It's been a long day at the hospital, so I'm a little fried tonight. But we'll get through as best we can. And again, the main purpose of this hour is to help you reset yourself to where you want to go and what you want to get and how you want to make your life the image of your dreams, right? And to create the
Absolutely.
life that you're happy and proud to be living in. And there's
Hi
Melly. She's
there.
there. Hi, welcome, welcome. Glad you're
And
here, of course.
Kim.
There's Kimmy. Hey. So we got family members on, which is, I'm so honored by the support I get from all the family. You guys are just the best. A father, a grandfather, a great grandfather couldn't be more proud than I am of
Oh.
my family.
Hey, Pop, you can't leave on the note of you've just had a long day at the hospital. You have to
Oh, I'm
say
sorry.
why.
Good point.
Yeah.
Well, twice a month, my dear wife has to have procedures done. And today was one of those days. And it was done in Riverside, which is a bit of a ways down the road. And it was a little later in the day than we normally do this and a little further away. We usually go to Moreno Valley, which is, for those of you in other areas of the country, look it up on a map. But Moreno Valley is about half the distance that it is to Riverside. So it was twice the distance, and we didn't get there till like 1 or 12 o'clock, and it was 3 o'clock before we were done. By the time, actually, it was almost 4 o'clock by the time we got on the road, and so we got here just a few minutes ago. And again, it's been a long day, but we're happy to be here. And again, the whole purpose of this meeting, of our Facebook time, is to help everybody get reset, to shake off all that negativity that we've taken on from the last week and just let all that stuff go, right? That's what Nicole's doing there. Just do it
Shake
in
it
the tank
off.
and shake it all off, right? And start fresh.
Yes.
It's one of the things that I find most important in life. And, there are times where I do it really well, and then there are days where I don't do it as well, which is to just let it go as quickly as I can, right? And I do know from all of the years of wearing whispers that they help a great deal. But I also have my own responsibility, right? I can't just expect some filter that I'm wearing to let go of all that stuff. I have to be conscious and aware of what's going on inside of me and get recentered to where I want to be. And so I had that experience this week where I had to just say, all right, let's get back to what's important. Let's get
Okay,
back.
so let's get down to that. What is your routine of when things are heavy and when things besides the power hour, right? Because this lifts us all up.
Yep.
But what is your routine in shutting it down and recentering?
Well, quite often it will require getting in my walking shoes and a jacket and go out and take a nice long walk in nature.
Oh, I like that.
And it's amazing how that fresh air and the trees and all of the things in our environment kind of help bring you back to reality, back to what's really important, right? And meditation, of course, every morning is really important because that helps to spin off that negativity as well from your mind. That's what meditation is all about, really, is regrouping all of your life force energy back into you rather than having it spread all over the world, right? And God knows there's plenty of things that take our attention and to pull ourselves away from our center. So it's a practice, like everything, right? It's not a destination. It's a journey. So
Yes.
we are constantly readjusting. It reminds me of the spacecraft when they shoot rockets up in space, right? I think they said that they're on course something like 8% of the time. It
Wow.
might even be less than that. And in the old days, computers, when they first started the space industry, the computers they used to control the rockets had less memory than your phone does. Is that amazing? And so they would shoot rockets up into space, and they would have to adjust it 98% of the time because it would go off course, right? And we get upset if we're off course for a half a minute, right? A half a day or whatever. So, again, it's all going back to getting really clear about the fact that we're human beings and we are supposed to make mistakes. We're supposed to do things wrong. We're going to have all that kind of stuff. But the whole idea is to forgive yourself and get back to center, get back to where you want to go, and put your energy into that, right? So that's what mind whispering is all about, is getting that mind quiet, because the mind is such a beast and it's constantly trying to feed us stuff that we don't want. And we have to be consciously aware of what our mind is doing, because we are not our mind. What are we, Nicole? Do you remember?
We're soul.
We're soul. That's right. And so that's where we want to live, is in our soul. And our soul only wants what?
Love.
Love. That's right. So the more I can stay in that, right, the better I feel. And it's never 100%. But that's okay.
Yeah. So what do you do when your mind tells you lies, Pop? I mean, our mind does tell us lies.
Well,
our mind feeds us that negative blah, 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 blah.
Right. The first thing is awareness, right? You have to be aware that it's doing that. And when it's doing it, what I do is simply say, okay, mind, that's not what we want. What we want is to think about all the things we have to be grateful for. I appreciate that you're looking out for me, but here's the way I want you to think. All right. So it's almost like talking to your child, your inner child, right? And saying, okay, here's the direction we're going to go in. We're going to create an amazing thing. And when you get clear, I have this exercise that I've given to so many people, and I don't know of anybody who's actually done it besides me. And that exercise is this: write down on a piece of paper, for those of you watching on the rebroadcast, and those of you watching right now, get a pen and paper. I'll give you a minute to get it, and then we'll give you this process that you do. If you don't know who you are and you don't know where you want to go, what are you doing? How do you expect to get anywhere if you don't know where you're at and you don't know where you're going? Right? And that's where most of us are. I was talking to a young man the other day who's getting out of high school. And I said, so what do you want to do when you grow up? He goes, I don't know. I said, yeah, that's the way most of us are, right? We go through all those years of high school, of elementary school and junior high school and then high school, and we graduate and it's yippee, I graduated. And maybe some went to college, maybe some didn't. But even those that would finish their college degrees, most of them still don't know what they really want to do or what they really want to be. How many times have you talked to somebody that studied to be a lawyer, and at the end of all of their learning, what they learned was that they didn't want to be a lawyer, right? And that happens so often. I've always said that, the way we should set up our schools, especially in high school, is that every semester you apprentice in a different industry. Mm. So if you think you've got a passion for helping animals, let's say, then take a semester and volunteer at a veterinarian center, volunteer at an animal shelter, volunteer at walking dogs, whatever you can do to connect with the animals that you feel you have passion for. Spend a semester doing that, right? Or let's say you love broadcasting and you think you want to have your own podcast show or whatever the case might be. Apprentice with somebody that's already doing one, so you can learn the ropes and you can get the feel whether that really works for you or not, right? How much different would your course in life be if you started out after the school years with a real clear idea of where you wanted to go and how you were going to get there? But we don't do that in school. We want you to learn the ABCs. We want you to understand American history and social studies, whatever the courses are. Those are all wonderful and helpful. But do they prepare us for really getting out in the world and becoming the person we want to be? I don't think so. So anyway, that's always been my thought, is that, wouldn't it be great if you spend, especially the high school years, right? Freshman to senior, spending a semester every year. What, you get 4 semesters, isn't it, when you go to school? My brain cells working well enough? Okay.
Yeah.
So 4 times a year, you could practice, you could go into certain different fields and apprentice, right? And that would give you school credits. But even more importantly is you'd get a direction for your life. What really makes your creative juices flow, right? So anyway, that's my little pontification on our education system.
Well, it used to be when I was in school, they taught, and it's probably way different for you because you were back in the Stone Age.
That's right.
But-
Yeah. Well, we wrote on stone tablets with a chisel and hammer.
But we used to get, home ec, there was wood
Right.
shop, there was like all these different things. And
Right.
then also we had driver's ed, and then they also taught you like how to balance a checkbook. And I think
Right.
they've gone away from all of that.
Right.
So
Have
and
they
it's
gone
kind
away
of
from it now?
unfortunate.
That's
What's
right.
that?
They've gone away from all that now?
I believe so, yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
So how are you supposed to know what you want to be when you grow up?
right.
So here's how you're going to find out. Yeah. Pencil and paper's out. I haven't seen any comments in the comment section, but here we go. So write down on a piece of paper, what would you do with today if you had all the money in the world and you knew you couldn't fail? What would you do? They even took away learning cursive.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. I have no idea what learning cursive is, but I'm sure it's something great.
Handwriting.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well,
Instead of just block numbers,
Right. Crazy, right?
Block
So
letters.
what would you do with today if you had all the money in the world and you knew you couldn't fail? What would you do? A young lady many years ago, probably 40, pretty close to 40 years ago.
I could
Made
see
a comment on an animal sanctuary, right? See, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. So 40 years ago, let's say, it's right around there, I knew I hated what I was doing for a living. I hated it. And I really had no idea about what it was I wanted to do. And this young lady gave me exactly that instruction that I've given to you. What would you do with today if you had all the money in the world and you knew you couldn't fail? How would you spend your days? You write that down on a piece of paper, you put it on your nightstand, and every night when you go to bed, read that to yourself. What would I do with today if I had all the money in the world and I knew I couldn't fail? What would I do? And then when you get up in the morning, before you get out of bed, you take that piece of paper and you read it to yourself again. What would I do with today if I had all the money in the world and I knew I couldn't fail? What would I do? And in the beginning, you do all the stuff that, just like what Kimberlyn said there, I'd own an animal sanctuary, right? Or I'd cure world hunger, or I would, feed the hungry, or whatever the passion is that you feel you have inside you. But as you go along, I'd travel the world. If I had all the money in the world, I'd travel forever and I'd visit all the, yeah, sure you would. But what would you really want to do? What would really make you excited to get up every day and get to work, right? Because then it's not work, it's passion, right? So here's Melly saying I would open up a resource center to help the homeless population, to take them to and from job interviews and help with everyday life functions. Well, that's wonderful. And I think that there are resources available for people that want to do that, right? There's a lot of governmental positions that you could probably get into that would pay you reasonably good money to get involved in just this kind of thing. And again, maybe it starts off with some volunteer time, which is kind of hard to do when you get out in the workaday world, right? When you're living with mom and dad, it's a little easier, but when you're in the workaday world, it's like, okay, how do I discover my passion and how do I get paid so that I've got a roof over my head while I'm doing it, right? So anyway, start doing that for yourself, right? Every night before you go to bed, read that to yourself. Every morning when you get up, read it again. And what that does is it starts to create and here's another one from Cheryl. I would buy a bunch of apartment buildings to help the homeless. With that, I would also have a job like security officers to make sure that people were treating the place with respect. Well, that's right. And there is so much. The homeless situation is such a difficult thing, isn't it? Because it's not just one thing that's going to solve the problem. It's kind of like our society and as a whole, right? I mean, there's such a disparity now between the haves and the have-nots that's very difficult to overcome. Giving giving 25 cents an hour as an adjustment to help people, that doesn't even begin to touch it, right? And for those that are homeless, we have so many different issues involved: mental health, we have financial issues, we have drug issues, we have self-esteem issues, and all of these different things that are difficult to overcome with just a one Band-Aid fits all cuts kind of thing, right? But Cheryl, that's an awesome and noble goal to have. And if that is where your passion is, here's what makes this thing so magical. Our minds are our creative machine, right? That's that gift that God gave us to create the kind of life we want. But our minds have gotten so far away from what its purpose was number one, to protect us, and number two, to give us the tools we need to create what we want to have in life. That it's become like the robot in Star Wars. Right? Will Robinson. You remember the TV show, The Robinsons, I think it was called? And they had a robot that would constantly go, "Danger, Will Robinson, danger!" Right? And that's kind of the way the mind has become. It's like everything's oh my God, there's a problem. Oh my God, right? Rather than, how are we going to make this work, right? So Lost in Space. That's exactly right, Cheryl. You see, you know, right? But yes, Lost in Space, and that's kind of like the way most of us feel, don't we? You know my favorite saying, right? The Walt Whitman saying about the huddled masses live in quiet desperation. And that's what, and unless you know how to start making those things that you want, or the ideas that you kind of have buried. See, I believe everybody's got a big dream buried inside them. And that because we get told no so many times, especially by our own mind, right? And the dream can feel so big that we don't think we can do it, or that we're worthy. Who am I to think I can create this, right? Who are you to not think you can do that? You're a child of God. You have everything in you need to make anything you want to have happen. It just takes a lot of focus, right? And effort and determination. So Lost in Space is kind of the way most of us are, the huddled masses living in quiet desperation. We don't know how in the world we're going to get to where we want to go, especially when every time we try something, the mind's going, "You can't do that. What are you, crazy? Are you stupid? You can't do that, right? No, you can't be a model. What do you, look at you? You know where those lumps are on your body. You can't do that, right?" And look at what's the woman's name that I'm thinking of, a singer that's very large. What's her name? goodness. Anyway, she's a very large woman. And she wears a tight outfit, and she gets up on stage, and she just performs her heart out. And she has an amazing voice, and she plays a flute, I think it is. Lizzo, that's exactly right. Boy, you're 3 for 3. You're really cooking, Cheryl. Yeah, Lizzo. I mean, if she should be a role model for every woman on the planet, right? She absolutely refuses to think that she can't do what she wants to do or be what she wants to be because of somebody else's judgments and somebody's view of how a woman should look. And big women shouldn't be out in the public. You should be wearing a tent and walking around in shame, right? And she goes, no, I am large, and by God, that's the way God made me, and I'm going to celebrate being large, right? An amazing woman. I saw an interview with her with David Letterman on the new show he does, and it was so eye-opening when you get past the largeness of her, right? And really get to understand who she is and what she does and why she does it, and her motivation for getting out there and being a role model for women. It's just really awesome. And I have the world's respect for her because here she's doing something that most women would never even think of doing, right? She's just says, I've got something to say, I've got music to sing, and I'm going to do it, right? And she just did it. And so, I've always talked about how I have some misgivings about our Fortune 500 companies that we have running frankly, so much of our lives, right? That to me, they've become soulless and they don't really care about their employees. They just care about how much profit they're going to make, right? And that to me is sad because every human being deserves to live a good life. Nobody should have to sleep in the streets. And that's what Cheryl's talking about, and Melinda and Kimmy is that, we have to be passionate about our brothers and sisters and care about how their life is going and what can we do to help make it better. That's why we do this show every week, right? Is because we want to help remind people that they are that spark of God right within themselves. And that alone is enough to get you where you want to go. And we just want to encourage you to go for it. And don't quit. Don't quit no matter what, right? It's like we talked about the baseball players, right? 300 hitters make multi-million-dollars a year, right? That's only 30% of the time they're successful, and it makes them multimillionaires. So all of us do better than that in the overall course of our day. We don't mess up 80% of the time or 70% of the time, right?
Nope.
And yet we'll stop ourselves because we made a mistake or something didn't go the way we thought it should go. And we give up. That's what separates successful people. When you have to define success, first of all, but in any definition of success, there will be a huge portion of the determination that it takes to succeed, the never giving up, the indefatigable desire to accomplish a goal, right? Indefatigable, not an easy word. Not for me, anyway.
What does it mean?
But that's what it takes. It takes that I'm not going to give up, period. I'm going to make this happen. And, I was thinking about it just this morning that, gosh, I still haven't gotten a lot that I want to get done. And what am I doing? Am I just tilting windmills or what? Right. And then I got a little smile inside myself. And I said, so what else would you do? Right? So what? Just keep doing it, right? Something will either break or it won't, but either way, if I'm doing something I love doing, then it's okay, right? And it's okay anyway. The difference for me is when a new person gets whispers for themselves and they wear them for a little bit. And they call me and they go, Dan, this is amazing. I'm going to tell you a story about a woman I worked with years ago. And I'm hoping to get her on the show here soon, if I can nudge her into doing it. Her name is Brenda, and she is just a wonderful person. And we were working together in a Best Buy. And I didn't talk to many people about the whispers in my job because my job's my job. And I didn't know, the old saying about not doing something where you eat, right? And
I know, right? What
and so one day I'm watching her, and she has the look on her face like she's gonna throw up, right? I mean, she's stressed. You could just see the stress on her face, and I think she's just worked herself up into a tizzy, and she's just ready to explode, right? And so my heart went out to her, and I walked up and I said, Brenda, you trust me, don't you? And she goes, yeah, I trust you a lot. I said, well, I want to give you something for you to hold, and I just want you to hold it for a while and see what you notice. Would you do that for me? And she said, well, of course. So I handed her a whisper and I walked away. Didn't tell her what she was going to experience. Didn't tell her a thing, right? Just hold on to it for a while and see what you notice. About an hour later, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter, I don't know. But I looked over at her and she had this almost drunk look on her face, right? I mean, she's just blissed out. And I walked up to her and I said, so how are you doing, Brenda? And she just looked at me and stared for a minute. And she goes, these things are amazing. This is a miracle. I said, oh, yeah, what did you notice? She goes, well, when you handed it to me, I was thinking about going home because I felt so bad, right? I thought I was going to throw up. I said, well, that's the look you had on your face too, is that you were going to throw up, right? And she said, and now I'm just sitting here just totally blissed out and I'm not concerned about a damn thing. I said, yeah, that's the whole thing, is letting go of all that energy that's causing you to feel so awful, right? And of course, she bought a set on the spot, right? But that wasn't my intent. My intent was to help somebody that I saw in pain feel better. Yeah. And that's the joy I get every day, really, is almost every day. Where, in fact, every day, that I get an opportunity every day to help somebody feel better. Every single day, right? And that's really cool. Yeah. It's, to me, that's what life is all about. If you make millions of dollars in your life and you've had to stomp on people to get it, what have you accomplished? You can't take that home with you, meaning the real home. When you die, you don't get that U-Haul behind you with a van full of money, right? You leave all of this stuff here. So it's how you treat people. It's what kind of a difference are you making in the world? Here we had two young ladies who commented on here already about their dream. In fact, 3 young ladies, that's right. 3 young ladies talk about what they would do if they had all the money in the world and they knew they couldn't fail. Now, that'll adjust, right? But if you do that exercise I'm talking about, you will actually see things start to happen by magic. I got that sidetracked a few times, but what I was talking about is when you do this, that creative mind starts functioning and starts kicking in. And then what happens out in the world is that little signs start happening, little events start happening that kind of show you like a roadmap of how to get where you want to go. God will open up doors that you hadn't even seen before, right? Awareness comes to you that you hadn't even thought about, that will help direct you into your soul's purpose, what your real purpose is here on earth, right? I'm absolutely certain that the reason that I got to experience having absolutely no self-esteem whatsoever, and you probably don't remember those days, Nicole. You might have a vague memory here or there, but for the most part, you don't. And I get that. But I was such, I have said even on this show that your mother did the right thing by divorcing me because I was a freaking train wreck back then, right? And she tried and she tried to get me to see that I was a good person, but I had such self-loathing that I couldn't even hear her, right? And I think a lot of people are that way. And so you get married, you have kids, and yet you still feel so totally alone. That huddled mass living in quiet desperation. So those experiences, that feeling of total uselessness and worthlessness, and being afraid of offending somebody just by being in their presence. Those kinds of thoughts and those kinds of feelings for me really motivate me, and really kind of like it's kind of like those kind of people that feel the way I did, kind of like have this beam around them, right? This globe around them that says, "Yeah, that's one of me. That's one of me. That's one of me." And you see them in a crowd, right? It's like they have a different energy than everybody else. And so it makes my heart feel good when I can just maybe make a comment, or sometimes even just a smile, right? Can make a world of difference in those people's lives. And that's what really excites me today. And again, I go back to, this is why God had me have all those horrible experiences and feelings and of worthlessness and everything, so that when I got out of that, which thank God, his will, right? When I got out of feeling that way, I can now use the gifts that I got from those experiences to help other people do the same.
Yes.
And that's really my motivation for living, right? If that was taken away from me, I'll never forget that when Kate and I lost everything financially in the '08 crisis, crunch, I wondered why in the world God would take that work away from me, because I thought that's what he wanted me to do. And it broke my heart. It really did. And what I got to see, and that's the point about the fact that when we have things that we go through that feel horrible, there's always a good that comes from it. We just can't see it yet because we're all wrapped up in the loss, or what we perceive as loss, right? And what I got to realize is that I can use the tools that I use in my business, and the way I explain things to people and help them to recognize who they really are, right? I can use that everywhere I go. I don't have to have it in my business just that way, right? So it made having to go back to work in a world that I really don't believe in the workaday world. I've always felt it was a cruel, um, soul-sucking way to live your life, right? I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And so to have to get away from the entrepreneurism to keep a roof over the house, over the head, and food in the refrigerator is a sacrifice, right? And I think, but I never give up on the fact that that's where I want to be, and that's really my vision, is being an entrepreneur. And so I want to remind everybody once again that entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't. They'd rather be the huddled mass because it's what they know. It's not so scary. I love that. I love that commercial where the guy makes up his mind he's going to leave his job, and he quits, and he runs out the door, and he's all excited. And the next scene shows him out in the desert, and he's like, "Oh my God, what have I done?" Right? And that's what most entrepreneurs experience the first time they take the leap, right? But that's what this whole sentence is about. Entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so that you can spend the rest of your life like most people can't. And I'm always grateful to God for having given me, what was it, Nick, 30 years of working self-employed and working towards that dream that I've always held, right? And I'm grateful that I had that time. And I'm hoping that before I take my dirt nap, that I'll be able to have the taste of a level of success that I would like to see this business have. that we can help more people to understand the importance of recognizing who they are and how to let go of all that energy and all of those thoughts and feelings that keep them huddled like those in quiet desperation, right? That's my dream that's always been my dream for this work, because it's so amazing how you feel. You've never had a balancing, I don't think, have you, Nicole?
Yes.
Have you?
Yes.
Long time ago?
Yes.
Long time ago, right?
Yeah.
You got to do it again someday.
Yes.
Yeah. But the difference in people when they get up off the floor, literally off the table, and how they feel afterwards is just amazing. It really is a near miracle. All right, we got another comment. I heard someone say once, when you get a thought to do something, you must get up and do it within 5 seconds or you won't do it. And it really resonated with me because I always put things off until it becomes overwhelming.
Ooh.
So may I say, oh yeah, I hear Nicole. Go ahead, Nick.
I know it's coming.
Go ahead.
Change the verbiage.
Yeah.
I always.
Yeah.
If you always do something, you're going to always do something.
If you keep on doing what you're doing, you're going to keep on getting what you're getting, right?
Yeah.
Good old Kenny used to always say that. But that's right. If you think about something, get up and do it within 5 seconds or you won't do it. When Kate and I first got married, well, not when we first got married, but when we first moved into our house that we had, she would say, I'd be watching TV and she'd come in and she'd say, oh, Dan, I'm noticing that there's a loose board somewhere or whatever the heck it was, right? I said, oh, okay. So I'd jump up off the couch and I'd go fix whatever it was that needed to be fixed. And after about the 4th or 5th time of doing that, Kate said, you know, when I mentioned to you that there's something that needs to be fixed, I don't mean that you need to jump up off the couch and fix it immediately. I said, yeah, but see, here's the thing. If I don't jump up and fix it immediately, I'll probably forget it. And you'll have to remind me 4 or 5 times about fixing things. And then you'll be that naggy wife that you don't want to be. And I'll be the no good husband that I don't want to be. Right? So it's better for me to just get up and fix it. Then it's fixed and I feel good that I fixed it. And you don't have to nag me. Right? Who wants that? So that's why, and that's exactly the point that Melinda's making here, right? If you got a thought to do something, just do it, right? If you feel passionate about, I want to do a podcast, put some energy towards it, right? It won't happen by you just saying, I think I'm going to do this, right?
Yeah.
10 years from now, you'll still be thinking about it. I know it's hard. You know, God knows I know it's hard when you've got so many things going on in life that, you know, take your attention away and your energy away. And there's just so many hours a day. And, you know, I heard a man say years ago, your mom and I were in an apartment with you guys, of course. And we had a guy come in to clean our carpets. And the guy, I was talking to the guy, as I do. I talk to people, you know, and one of the things your mom used to hate. But anyway, I started up a conversation with him. I asked him, you know, how did he get into the carpet cleaning business? He goes, well, I'm retired. And a guy asked me if I could help him one day clean some carpets. And so I helped him do it. And I was having so much fun doing it that I started my own business. I said, oh, that's awesome. And, you know, those are in the years where I was not doing things I enjoyed doing and I was miserable, right? And he said, yeah, he said, what I found for my life was that the hardest thing in the world is making a living. That's the hardest thing in the world. And that once you get past that point, making a lot more money is much easier. But it's that grind of making enough to pay your rent and put food on the table and clothes on the kids and all of those things that go on in life that takes so much energy and so much focus. And how in the world do you have much time to do anything else, right? And that's why a lot of entrepreneurs have 2 or 3 or 4 marriages, because they had to put so much of their energy into what it was they were trying to create that the kids suffered and the wife suffered, and families tend to just not put up with that for a long time, right? Plus, a lot of people that have that kind of focus tend to be kind of hard to live with. So, balance in all things, right? So, what would you do with today if you had all the money in the world and you knew you couldn't fail? What would you do? I know a young man who reminds me so much of me when I was young. Not a whole lot of self-esteem. And doing work that you just do, right? Just a job. But he wasn't happy in it, right? And then he found a job working in a school, teaching. He wasn't teaching, but he was involved with the children and in the learning, what's the word I want? Academia, right? And, working in that institution of education, right? And he found such joy in working with the children. And he lit up. Right? Instead of being so downcast because he was beating himself up so much because he wasn't who he thought he was going to be, even though he had no clue of who he was going to be, but he was comfortable in beating himself up because that's what he did. Kind of a lot like me, right? That's why, I always have a special spot for him because I know exactly what he went through. In fact, most of us have gone through that, right? And so he got to have that taste. And I know he's not doing what he wants yet, right? But he's had that taste. And once you taste that, it's kind of like ice cream. If you've never had ice cream, it doesn't mean a dang thing to you, right? And then when you have ice cream, it's like, oh man, that is good. But you couldn't explain it. You couldn't describe it even, what the taste is or why it seems so yummy, right? And it's kind of that way when you find your passion in life, right? It's like, oh my God. It's like to this day, I still walk around feeling like I know a secret that not many people know. Because I do. And that's the amazing thing to me was when I had no self-esteem and then started to break out of that, I thought everybody felt the way I did. No, I thought everybody but me felt positive and sure of themselves and where they were going and happy with themselves and all of that. Because, of course, it was all about me, right? That's the whole point. It's not about me. That's the thing I got to learn, right? But my God, the happiness and the joy and the freedom and the soul food that came from really reaching out and trying to help people feel better about themselves and encourage them to become who they want to be. And maybe sometimes it's just that smile that we've talked about, right? That just lets them know that they're seen and that they're not invisible and that they matter, yes. Right? Makes all the difference in the world. And so I encourage everybody, whether you're watching on the recording, whether you're on with us here tonight or not, is to give a little energy to yourself. Even if it's just a half an hour of saying, okay, where do I want to go? What do I want to do with my life? I don't want to just go to work, get up, get dressed, go to work, come home, feed the kids, talk to the husband, talk to the wife, go to bed. That's not living. That's existing, right? And maybe that's the most we can do today. But if we give a little energy to what we'd really want to do, you never know when something might happen. You're not too old. I mean, I'm, Jesus's age, right? I mean, like I said, I used to babysit him when he was a baby, right? Thought he was God. But if you give a little energy, God will give you a lot more back. It's like you can't outgive God, right? And you never know. We talk about how people, there's that cartoon or caption that shows two miners digging in a tunnel, right? And they don't realize that they're this close from breaking through, and they quit, not knowing they were that close, right? And so that's the way we have to be, is that we're not going to give up no matter what. And if we get clearer about where it is we want to go, we've got a better shot at getting there, right? And so it's like on my website, I have an assessment form that people can fill out. I don't know if it's active yet now or not. I'll have to check and see. But it's an assessment form that kind of just helps you to take a look at where you are today. Because you can't get to where you want to go if you don't know where you're starting from, right? Like, so what areas of your life do you feel the strongest? And what areas of your life do you feel the weakest? Now, we talked about this before, I think, Nicole, about how, if you have a wheel and it's got the big dent in the wheel, yeah, you're gonna be able to make some distance in the journey. But boy, every time you hit that big hole in the wheel, you're gonna thump and it's gonna hurt, right? Same kind of thing. So the assessment kind of helps you to get clearer about how you really look at yourself, how you really look at your life, and what do you want to create with it, right? And once you get clear about that and the fact that you deserve to have the kind of life you want, then it gets easier to create it, right? But if you and we do this, if you start out with the idea, I'm going to create something awesome today, and then 10 minutes later, your mind's going, you idiot, what are you thinking? You're not going to do that. You know you're not going to do that. Sets you up for failure every stinking time.
I just had this conversation with a woman and not too long ago, and her old record player plays on and on, just like that. And I said,
yes.
How about using this tool? Thanks for your input. That's a lie.
Exactly
and
right.
Go on.
Yeah. Yeah. Even just thank you for the input, but here's what I want you to think.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's amazing to me, we humans don't communicate very well, do we? Right? And we're, it's like we have talked about this before, that, we'll get naked with each other, we'll do different things together, and but we don't have the courage to say, hey, I could use a hug. Or could you just remind me, I'm feeling a little low today. Could you remind me why you love me? Could you just do that for me, right? We can't ask for the simplest little things that would help us to feel better when we need it, right? We'd rather live in that quiet desperation because it's what we're used to. I remember years ago, and this is again when your mom, that was the thing that I think your mom went through so much with me, was that I was never willing to quit. She used to say to me, I was miserable in the job I was working in. And I'd come home and I'd just be so stressed out from the course of the day. And she'd say, why don't you just come home and be happy when you get home? Why do you have to come home upset? And I said, well, I work 10 to 12 hours a day. I sleep 8 hours a day. How much time does that give me for being happy? Right? And I would, I'd lose jobs because, of course, I'm a self-fulfilling prophet. I hate it and I can't wait to get out of it. So one way or the other, I'll get out of it, right? And it would be like, oh, the rotten things always happen to me, right? Not realizing that I was causing that without even realizing it, right? And that's what most of us do. So and that's where I've, and it's one of my favorite topics about living life backwards, right? We think that if we get the right person, if we get the right house, we get the right job, if we have good children, if we get the Ozzie and Harriet kind of life. Do you know who Ozzie and Harriet are, Nicole? Cheryl does, I know.
I do. I'm just kidding.
Huh?
I do. I'm just kidding.
Oh, you do? Okay. So, and I had a dear friend that used to say that Ozzie and Harriet was the worst thing that ever happened to the American culture, because you watch on TV, the wife has an evening dress on and the husband's wearing a sports jacket and he's smoking his pipe, and everything's just perfect and there's no problems of any real dimension, right? And so people look at that and they go, my life isn't like that. There must be something wrong with me, right? No, it's a TV show. But that's the way that people think it ought to be, right? So again, we're going to go back for just a minute and just remember, what would you do with today if you knew you couldn't fail? What would you do? I did that for the longest time. And then one day, well, I started, and it started just like everybody does when they do this, although I don't know of anyone that's actually done it, but I've heard stories about, that what happens in the beginning is you think, well, I'm going to cure world hunger. I'm going to, do this and that and feed the lepers and whatever the case is. But then what really starts to happen is you start getting a little clearer. That creative mind starts to move. That's what we talked about earlier, right? The creative mind starts to flow and doors start to open. And just like magic, you start to experience where you really want to go. And that's what led me to getting an energy balancing one night and having that feeling of no stress and tension anywhere in my body. And I could tell right then, in fact, the next day when I got that amazing balancing, that night on my way back to my car, I knew that I had found the work I wanted to do the rest of my life. And I committed to that. As you know, that's what I've spent all these years trying to build, right? Because of the magic that it did for me as a human being, and the magic that I've gotten to see happen for so many other people. And that's why I do this. So my wish for everybody in my family, everybody in my life, everybody that are listening to my shows here, and that, recognize that maybe they're doing it harder than it needs to be done. And that's the thing I found, was that as much as I wanted to make my life successful, it was just too hard. And because I couldn't change how I felt about me. That programming, like you talked about that record, right? We all have our own scripts that we live our life in. And we put everything in certain boxes, and this is how life flows, and this is what goes on. And it's really hard to break away from that. For me, it was almost impossible. And I tried. I knew my mind was my problem, but I didn't know how to fix it, right? Went to therapists. I went to motivational seminars. I went to, oh my God, I can't tell you all the money I spent on trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And this wonderful man took one look at me and he says, you live under high tension wires, don't you? And I did. I lived under those A-frames, right? And it was electrocuting me and I didn't even know it. It was frying my brain and I didn't even know it, right? And then I put those things on and it was like, oh my God, what a difference. And as I'm doing some recordings now to put on the website and to put on YouTube about what this work is all about, and about how high tension wires really cause a major problem in our bodies, right? And so doing those videos kind of has given me that reminiscent back to the days when this all started for me, right? And what an amazing journey it's been, good and bad, right? I mean, but the bad, like I've said so many times, what I would look at in the past and go, wow, that was really awful. It's like, yeah, it was, but look at what I learned from it, right? It's pretty awesome. So we're going to wrap up now. When Nick and I started tonight, I told her that I had no clue what we were going to talk about. And she goes, yeah, I got nothing either. And
here we are.
And here we
I
are.
want to remind you, and you finished that story of bless the pain. Bless the pain.
Bless the pain, right? The rabbi
Yes.
talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
metaphysical
that.
rabbi. Bless the pain.
Bless the pain.
Yeah. And, so we're going to end tonight with the reminder to do that 30-day exercise. If you do it for 30 days every morning, what would I do it today if I knew I couldn't fail? What would I do? Every night when you go to bed, what would I do if I had all the money in the world and I knew I couldn't fail? What would I do? I'd do exactly what I'm doing. So I hope for each of you that you'll take a little bit of time for yourself and do that exercise. I know it sounds crazy, and I know it sounds like, oh, that'll never work, but that's what your mind is telling you.
Thanks for your input. That's
exactly right. So, in ending our show tonight, Nicole, if everybody in our audience, both recorded and live, were to see somebody without a smile, what should they do?
Give them one of yours.
And
They're
why?
free.
They're free. And they make such a difference, right?
Yes.
They can
Yes.
change somebody's whole day, maybe even their whole life, right?
That's right.
So I love you all. I am so glad that you joined us tonight. And for those of you that watch this on YouTube or on Facebook, I hope you enjoy it. I hope it means a little something. If you get this much out of it, you got a lot.
Yes.
And it didn't cost you anything, right? It was free.
It was free.
So, yes, we love you guys. See you next week. Everybody take good care. Good night. Bye.
Happy Valentine's Day too.
Yes. Oh, that's right. Oh my goodness.
Nothing but love. Nothing but love.
Yes.